But when people are in pain, they don't have that ability to give that to you. And I had to find that within myself. I had to find that love within myself to the extent that I can actually return that to them today in the form of love, understanding, forgiveness.
%83 of Americans identify as not very happy, which can hold you back and negatively affect your relationships and your business. On this podcast, we discuss the proven steps to happiness so you can restore balance and rekindle your joy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of How to Be Happier podcast. I am with Marina, who has quite an amazing story I think you're going to find. Welcome today, Marina. How are you?
Hi, Brad. Thank you for having me. I'm doing amazing.
Awesome. So we're going to jump right in and give these folks listening and watching some amazing value today. So my first question for you, Marina, is it possible in a few years to go from saying, why am I here? And is my life worth living at all? To my life is so freaking amazing, it's hard to believe?
Absolutely, 100%.
And does it take years?
Doesn't have to take years.
How long could it take?
I've seen it in one day.
In one day.
Yes.
And how do you know this?
Well, I'm living proof to start with, but I've also had hundreds of clients and testimonials speak for themselves. And sometimes I get so surprised to hear back from them a day, a week, a month, a year later. And their lives have changed completely, never to be the same.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? But let's focus on your story first, because we did speak a couple weeks ago for the first time, and your story absolutely blew me away. It blew me away, but it's very similar to many, many, many stories that I've heard on my journey on how you took this life a couple years ago where you're like, why am I here? Is my life even worth living, right? To now, when we hung up the call last week, you were like, Brad, my life is so amazing. My marriage is amazing. My kids are amazing. So what is your story?
Well, I wrote it all down and I'm going to start in chronological order. I grew up in South Africa. I lived in South Africa until I was 32 years old. Then I moved to Canada. I grew up in a household where I lived through a lot of narcissistic abuse, and I can keep you very busy with stories around that. It was like living on a time bomb. My father was always angry, and when he was not, you were kind of in fear of when the bomb is going to go off. What are you going to do to contribute to that explosion? And that created a lot of hypervigilance in me, as well as anxiety, depression. And at a very young age, I started to experience anxiety attacks. I would not be able to sleep because the moment I sleep, I would be too anxious to function. I would hyperventilate. I would cry. And I went on antidepressants at a very young age.
How old were you, Marina, when you
I was about 17 when I went on antidepressants for the first time. Yeah. And then the biggest thing from that was my inner thoughts. I internalized everything. What is wrong with me? Why can I not fix this? I always wanted to fix it. I think in my heart of hearts, I've always been a helper. And another place where it showed up, I was born singing. I came out of the womb singing. And there's stories that my family tells about, I didn't cry. I went, aye. And my grandfather said that when I was colicky and I screamed a lot, he said she's going to be a singer. So from the age of 5, I was on stage. And as I developed this, I became an opera singer. I was a professional opera singer in South Africa. And with that, I landed a scholarship to go to Italy to study opera in Italy for 2 years. Well, because of this inner dialogue that was going on, I call it my inner radio station of I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. I can only get rejected. I declined it. I didn't take it. And then I went into a marriage instead. That was my choice. And I went into a marriage with a person I never should have married. And he's the father of my children, so I'm going to be kind towards him today. And but it was a lot of trauma for me, and I believe for him as well. And we moved to Canada during that time. In my opinion, in my view, I wanted to fix this marriage, and it just got worse. So we were here for 2 years when I finally walked out and I left the marriage. Being in a new country, giving up my career as a singer, and at that point I was singing for Calgary Opera, but it was evening. Just
Hey Marina, can we stop just for a second, because you said so many amazing things I want to touch on.
Yeah.
We'll come back. And I know you're as passionate about this work as I am. So you just want to tell, right?
Right.
Sometimes I find myself saying, Brad, slow down, because you're so passionate about this, right? So let's break a couple things down. Italy. You pass up an opportunity in Italy that could have been great for you, right?
Yeah.
On a conscious level, maybe you weren't saying I wasn't worthy of this, but on an unconscious level, what do you think? What were those hidden thoughts now that you've unearthed them all these years later? What do you think your unconscious mind was telling you?
I can remember that very well, because I started this relationship with a man I would marry, and there was a day when we were sitting next to a swimming pool, and he asked me, "What do you want for your life?" And I had this split thought of, I would love to be that opera star on a stage in Italy, but my inner thoughts, my subconscious thoughts would not allow me to go there. My subconscious mind told me, well, that's never going to happen. So I said to him, I want to get married and have children. And that was part of my dream, but that was not my ultimate dream.
Do you think that inner voice was saying that you don't deserve this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So now we fast forward a couple of years and you get married. Tell me again, I know you want to be kind because he's the father of your kids, but tell me the type of person he was and what kind of husband he was and why you think that your unconscious mind, subconscious mind picked him.
Well, there was a lot of similarities in his behavior towards me and my father. And not 100%, but there were definitely some similarities in the way he treated me, in the way he spoke with me, and underlying everything that was wrong with me. And I know in a very big way, and you and I have walked this journey, I know that he treated me from his own point of pain. But at that point, I didn't see that. It just made me feel worse about myself, and I became quite obese. And yeah, it felt like there's no hope. And oh my goodness, the nights of crying, the feeling of depression, the feeling of there's no hope. Why did I have kids? Why did I bring kids into this world? And finally, I moved out of that. That was tough. And that opened a new can of worms for me, because now I'm in a new country, 2 years in a new country. I don't have any family. I don't have that many friends. And now I don't have a resume. I don't have a work history in this country besides singing a little bit part-time in an opera chorus. So now I have to build a life for me and my kids. And I was experiencing poverty like I've never experienced it in my life. I didn't even think it was possible.
So Maria, can I ask you a question on picking him? So you said he was similar to your dad. Mm-hmm. Why do you think your subconscious mind picked him?
That's what I expected. That's what my inner dialogue told me. That was what my worth was. That's my expectations. That's all I knew.
And is that what you find? You've had hundreds of clients now in this space. Is that what you find that your clients do repeatedly, time after time after time?
Right. Unless you break the cycle, it continues.
Sure.
And the cycle is ours to break.
Right.
And I had to break the cycle.
So so I believe that our subconscious mind, or not, I believe this. The truth is, our subconscious mind, its only real role is to keep us alive, right? And so we often find our intimate partners recreate the same type of trauma that whoever created the trauma in our life, because they said, well, look, you survived it, so we're just going to keep doing that. And then there's another school of thought that says that our subconscious mind picks the person because this time we're hoping that they give us the love that they didn't give us the first time, and that we think we can change them. And, it doesn't work out. Doesn't work out too good if you look at the divorce rates. At least in the United States, I know you're in Canada. I don't know what they are in Canada, but the first divorce rate's around 52%. The second divorce rate's around 60%. And the third marriage divorce rate is like 72%. So those people that don't come and get help, what do? I mean, I was in this boat. I looked at my first wife and I was like, it's all her fault. I'm going to go find another one. And I found another one. And sure enough, that marriage blew up. And had I not gotten help, I would have gone from one woman to the next. Just, it's her fault. It's her fault. And, it's never a marriage is the relationship between the individual people, or the actual relationship isn't the problem. It's the relationship that the people have with themselves, right?
Absolutely. That to me is very important. And that's part of my story, because I kept on repeating the same pattern. And until the day that I broke that cycle of not loving myself, I kept on attracting the same relationship. Even after my marriage ended, I went into a relationship, and the next guy I had a friendship / relationship with, he passed away suddenly. And I thought there was something wrong with me. Like, why was I not lovable? Why could he not fight for his life because he loved me? Why could he not commit to me? Because that was an issue. And then the guy that I had a long-term relationship after that physically abused me.
Wow.
And that was a big turning point in my life. But what is wrong? And I set a lot of boundaries for my kids at that point. And even if I started to date somebody, I would say, when it came to a point where, okay, you can now meet my kids, I had rules. This is the way you will treat my kids. But I never had those rules for me. And that made me realize that I didn't love myself. I never loved myself the way I love my kids. And that was a big turning point in 2010 in my life.
Marina, did you think before that turning point that you loved yourself?
I don't even think it ever came up in my conscious mind. I honestly, thinking of it today, I never thought love was really available to me, because I experienced so much rejection.
So up until I'm 49 now, and up until 47, if you'd have asked me, and I've been like, yeah, I've got incredible self-love. I love myself. And man, was I flat wrong. So the only way you can change in this world is by having awareness, right? So I didn't have awareness. So I developed this quiz that anyone can take for free. It's a self-love quiz. It's only 12 questions. It takes like 3 minutes at that. bradchandler.com/quiz. Now, you'll get three results. One is extreme self-love, one is like mild self-love, and one is lack of self-love. Don't be disappointed if you don't get extreme self-love, because this tells you that you have an amazing opportunity to up-level your life and take it to places where you never had, never thought even possible. So go ahead and take that quiz. But Marina, back to, I asked you a question earlier and I kind of got you off the subject. So we're telling your story, and you're at a point in your life where you had left your husband. And I think you said you were like almost in dire poverty.
I was.
Tell us about that.
So we were new in the country. My ex-husband still didn't have a phenomenal job. He was still building a career for himself. So to try and get any alimony and child support from him was just like a couple of $100. That would not pay for rent. That would not give put food on the table. And I started to look for work, but I had to go on social assistance. And that was a slap in my face. That's not who I am. I felt so embarrassed. I felt depleted. Through that, the government put me in a program called Bridges to Success. I was in that class with prostitutes, with drug dealers, with drug addicts, to try and get a better life. I felt so out of place. And, I do that with a lot of love today, because that was where I felt. And I struggled through it. I felt horrible. So started to apply for jobs, and I would apply for 50 jobs and not one hit. And I felt just depleted. I felt that, this is what I'm worth. And just wanted to work really hard to get off social assistance. So my very first job was to be a school bus driver. And in the South African culture, that would be something that was really frowned upon. And I even had somebody teasing me, like laughing in my face, that oh my gosh, Marina as a school bus driver, ha, 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 ha. And it really stabbed me in my heart. But I was in that job for 2 weeks when a position that I applied for during the program Bridges to Success opened at my kids' school. And it was still a minimum wage, but I worked with my kids. It was a dream came true. I was with them every single day through some of the most difficult times in our lives. It was in our neighborhood. We could walk there. It was in the before and after school program. And I worked myself up there. I became a manager for them for one of their branches. And I could stay with my kids throughout their junior high, like their elementary years. When they went into junior high, I moved on. I went back to school. I upgraded and I kept upgrading. So things started to look up for me. And it was by 2010, 2011 that for the first time I was financially at a place where I could breathe on my own independently. And that also coincided with I need to start loving myself. And in relationships then, I stopped trying. I just gave up. I would go on the odd date if somebody asked me out. But because I got to know me, because I got to really fall in love with who I really am and see myself for the first time, I also made a list of who is the man that I want to love me for the rest of my life. And I had a very strict list, very things that are important to me. And that was my go-to list. When a guy asked me on a date and he didn't tick most of those boxes, it was a hard no. No, thank you. And so somebody came into my life as a friend, which was perfect because I was so singed. I was so hurt that I tease and I say I had an allergy to men at that point. But he came into my life as a friend. We met through our kids. Our kids became best friends. And 2 years after a friendship, it developed into more. And today, I always laugh and say, I've won the man lottery. And he may not be everyone's cup of tea, but he's mine. And we've been together almost 11 years. And we still, sometimes I still look at him and I'm like, wow, how did I get so lucky? He's an amazing man. And one of the first things when I realized there's something happening between us that he said to me, Madam Marina, I see you. Not me, but me. And that is the one thing in my childhood that was missing. I felt like an alien. I felt like my family always saw me as the person I really am not. They saw me as a troublemaker. I became the scapegoat.
So
still today, they don't see me, and that's okay because I've healed.
So kids need to be seen, heard, and understood, right?
Absolutely.
In order to get their needs met. And one of my mentors, Gabor Mate, says that every problem you have in your life comes from unmet childhood needs. And unfortunately, I don't come across a whole lot of people whose needs were met. So we're all damaged to some degree. But the great thing is we can turn this around. So you skipped over something that I think is really important. You had a battle with cancer.
Right. Yeah.
What year was that?
This was actually after Wayne and I got together in 2017. My mom had breast cancer, and it was subconsciously, I almost always looked for it, even though verbally I would say, well, I will never allow that in my body. Subconsciously, I had the first lump shortly after my divorce. And it was my awareness, my fear of it was just so big. And it happened in 2017 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I mean, the shock is tremendous. But this led me to understanding. And this is where RTT comes in.
So before you go to RTT, Marina, let me ask you a couple of questions about that. Because Gabor Mate has a 600-page book on, it's called The Myth of Normal. And the whole book is about how stress and unresolved childhood stress and unmet needs create all kinds of not mental, but physical issues and health issues. And I mean, everything from irritable bowel syndrome to cancer to MS. Where are your viewpoints on cancer and stress and how they interact?
Well, I think it's a very important thing. I have had many clients who are cancer, either survivors or are battling it. And in RTT, you always go and look for the root cause. That's why I wanted to bring it in. Because through RTT, after the fact, it came out. I made a list of this. In my case, cancer was rejection. And it was almost another cry for help to my family to say, see me. Please see me. Please love me. Please have sympathy for me. Please reach out to me. And I still didn't get it. I even heard somebody in my family say, oh, we're not sure if she really had cancer. I think she's putting it on. Are you sure? Are you sure? And that was the biggest thing for me, was to detach from what they cannot give me. And another amazing lesson in self-love, it was never their job. It's my job. I expected that from them. I yearned from them, that unconditional love. But when people are in pain, they don't have that ability to give that to you. And I had to find that within myself. I had to find that love within myself to the extent that I can actually return that to them today in the form of love, understanding, forgiveness, and I set them free.
So Marina, it's certainly not their responsibility to give you love at your age, but certainly when you were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it was their job, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we can't. There's no time machine. We can't go back to the past. So what we do with RTT is we separate you from the past. We teach people that you no longer have to be stuck in the past wanting love from your parents, because up until, I don't know, you can tell me, up until in your 40s, I think you were still struggling for the love of your parents. That's one of the greatest things that RTT does, and they do it quickly in a matter of hours. We'll get to that in a second. I want to hear your views on that, but I want to go back to the cancer thing. There's going to be people that are listening to this. They're like, she's crazy. Like she didn't develop cancer as a rejection. And we're here to tell you, and so is Gabor Mate, who's been doing this for 40 years. And if you want to go to one of the top cancer sites in the world, MD Anderson Cancer Research Center at the University of Texas, Austin, it says it right on their site. So cancer is, they don't say cause, but they say is certainly stress impacts it and increases cancer. So this is just another reason that if you're struggling and you've got some stuff from your past, and you may not even know you have it from your past. I'm sure you have a lot of clients like I do where they didn't even know things were in their past. I mean, 9 out of 10 of my clients are like, yeah, I had a happy childhood and my needs were met. So there's so many reasons to turn your life around and find the self-love. But one of them is, if you want to live a cancer-free life and you want to, live an illness-free life, stress will tear you up inside, won't it? and you're saying that. So you're a cancer survivor, and you're saying, yes, I think all of this unresolved trauma and stress in my life played a part in my cancer. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think fear is also a big thing in stress. So for me, that underlying expectation that, well, my mom had it and I discovered my first lump in 2003. That's 20 years ago. And then I had it removed in 2005. And then ever since then, the doctors wanted to see me frequently. And so that created a fear. And I still remember that first time when they discovered the lump, they wanted to do a biopsy. I was newly divorced, and I was really, it was hard. It was really tough. I was there on my own, didn't know what it was. The doctor came in and said, I wanted to do a biopsy on this spot. This doesn't look right. And then just waiting for it to come back and waiting for the results. That's difficult. That's very difficult. And then every single year going through the same. And it's never been a smooth sailing, or I shouldn't say never, but a lot of times of, okay, now after the mammogram. So I also, in Canada, at the age of 50, women get frequent screening. But I was 34 when I started to do frequent screening because of lumps. That's young. So there was that underlying fear, that expectation, and then add all the emotional stress onto that. And in a sense, looking at that today was definitely that yearning for my family. And the child me, you touched on that, Brad, the child part of me that was still yearning, not my adult part, the child part of me that never got the healing I wanted. And that is where RTT is amazing. 2 things. Understanding. I don't think we ever heal our clients. I think our clients heal themselves by getting the understanding. And then the second thing is upgrade to the point where you can upgrade that child to that point of self-love, where they really completely don't see their childhood and their parents or whoever else hurt them through the same lens anymore. And that, to me, is what we do.
So in 2018, I think you told me that's when you were questioning yourself, why are you here, right?
Right.
Now we're here in 2023 and you're telling me you have the greatest life, like you just can't believe it.
Yes.
So in a matter of years, you've completely changed your life. But you and I both know through RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy, that we've seen, instead of 5 years, we've seen this done in like 3 to 5 hours. And I think you mentioned a day. So talk a little bit, I mean, you've had hundreds of clients. Talk a little bit about what is it? Like, what is actually RTT and why does it work so freaking well?
My gosh, I can give you so many examples. I once had a sex addict who didn't understand why he had so many problems. And he had one session with me, and there was something that happened with him in childhood. And he always blamed himself. But through RTT, he could see differently. He could get that understanding, and he could release himself from the guilt of that and understand that he did not do that. The adult that was involved did that to him. And then see it in a completely different perspective. Within 24 hours, he started to, it was almost like speech diarrhea, if I can say it like that. He sent me message after message after message. And he said, I don't know what you've done, but I will never in my life be able to look at sex the way I used to. And that was one session.
In a good way.
I've seen many of them in a very good way.
So tell me, Marina, what did you do? Did you give him a bunch of drugs? Did you do EMDR technology? Did you throw him off a bridge? Like, what did you do?
I helped him to see where this came from. What was the root cause? What was the root cause for him to think that's the only thing that's available to him? And once he could see that, he could heal it. He could upgrade that child in him that was hurt so deeply. The open wound of that made him go back to the same thing that hurt him in the first place. We closed the wound like that. And so once he closed the wound, it changed.
And you used hypnosis, I'm assuming?
Yes, of course, yes.
Okay. Why does hypnosis work? What's that about?
Well, hypnosis is just the relaxation of the conscious mind. So the conscious mind are the beta brainwaves, which is very fast. Like we have millions, if not billions of thoughts every single day in the conscious mind. And the moment you start to slow that down and you go into alpha brainwave, you can get alpha brainwave and you can get deep alpha brainwave. That's all we do. It's relaxation and then giving suggestions, helping people with imaginations. Imagine yourself standing on a beach. Imagine yourself in a hot air balloon. Imagine yourself with magnets between your hands. I love the one. Imagine closing your eyes. I'm bringing you a lemon. Smell the lemon. And even just talking about it, I immediately feel the saliva in my mouth. So hypnosis is the shutting down, the turning down of those very active thoughts, so that the deep-rooted, that inner voice, that inner radio station that made me not go to Italy can come out, that made me see, but why? Not, oh, well, I actually want to get married, but why? No. Because I don't believe I'm worthy. I don't believe I'm good enough. I don't believe I will make it. It's to get to that.
That subconscious mind drives 95% of our behavior, right?
Right.
So interesting. So I've got on the screen right now, it says you heal pain by going to the source. This is the same with physical pain as it is with mental pain. You have to go to the source to heal it. And that's what you do every day. And that's what I do every day. Mm-hmm. We unearth and we show people through hypnosis and accessing their subconscious mind that they don't have to be controlled by these silly thoughts. They're all untruths, right? That they don't even know they're being controlled by. So you said something earlier, and I want to explain it to the listeners about upgrading the child. So in that exercise, and you can tell me if you have a different viewpoint, but in that exercise, you're basically taking that child out of that situation, out of that source of pain, and bringing them into current today. Because what trauma does is it takes you out of the present. It keeps you locked in the past. So even pick your age. If you're 40, 50, 60 years old, if you're 85 years old, and you have really intense like anxiety or fear or sadness or whatever, it's usually never to do with the actual event that you're in. It has to do with the time when you were 2 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old. Your body, until you make the separation and do the work, you can be a 95-year-old man or woman stuck in a 6-year-old stuck in a 95-year-old's body. Because again, remember what the subconscious brain, that the only reason it's around is to keep you alive. So thousands of years ago, if the lion's attacking you or you shake a bush and the lion bites you, it doesn't want you when you're 95. Not that you would have lived to 95 back then, but let's just play along. If you did live to 95, it doesn't want you to forget that. So it's always going to bring you back to the worst pain that you ever had in your life. And that's why so many human beings are caught in this depression, anxious, fearful state all the time, because all they're doing is they're living out their 6-year-old self.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times I refer to this emotional scar that we carry in that inner child. So I like to use my own life as an example, because I am a living, walking, breathing example of what I do every single day. I am grateful that 99% of the problems my clients come to me with is something that I had to overcome. So it's so relatable. I can relate to so many people. So I'm very grateful for that. Today, I live in gratitude for that, because if I did not have that wealth of deep understanding, I was in their shoes at some point, I don't think I can do what I do. But that's part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. But if you look at that inner child that was so hurt, that inner radio station, that you're not lovable, you're not likable, you are ugly, you're overweight, whatever it was. Once you get rid of that, it's really like getting rid of an emotional cancer.
It sure is. It
and
sure is.
I really relate to that, because, during my months before my diagnosis, I had this fatigue. And I remember Wayne saying to me, "Why are you always tired? I'm worried about you." And when I finally got the diagnosis, it took a little bit because of our healthcare system in Canada. From the moment I found the lump, which was not a new experience for me, until the moment I had the diagnosis, were quite a few weeks. And I was so tired. I used to work out a lot, but I would go for a dog walk, 40-minute dog walk, and I would come home and I would crash. And because we get all the snow here, I always see snow shoveling as exercise. I would go and shovel the snow better than all the kids combined. But suddenly I couldn't do that. I would do that for 10 minutes and I'd collapse. But when I had the mastectomy and I recovered from this scar tissue and the trauma of the surgery itself, that fatigue from the cancer was gone, visibly, noticeably gone. And that is why it's, to me, the same thing. It's like a spiritual, an emotional, psychological fatigue that we carry with us when we have that wounded inner child. Absolutely. And Brad, my story is traumatic. My story is difficult. But there are a lot of people who it's the interpretation of something that happens in life. And it doesn't have to be this extreme, traumatic, crazy story. It can be something much simpler, like a teacher who said, "Why are you so stupid?" Or "Why are you so slow?" Or "Why are you so bad?" That can contribute to that inner radio station that makes somebody believe they're not good enough.
That's why I stopped using the word trauma. I try to stop using the word trauma because people check out when they hear that, because they're like, "Why didn't my teacher just call me stupid?" But anyway, Marina, that was an amazing, that was so much value. How can people get in touch with you?
Through my website is the easiest. It's my name, Marina Theron-Monnery, MarinaTheronMonnery. That's a mouthful.com. And I can just contact me directly through the website.
So that's another episode of How to Be Happier podcast. Guys, if you like this, would you please rate me, review me, and subscribe to the channel and share it? And also, I just launched a private Facebook group called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. So if you want to join that, just go to bradchandler.com/contact and you'll be invited. And I'll approve you when I can. Just remember, like we said, if you're struggling, you don't have to struggle. There is a proven way in a matter of hours that can completely and radically transform your life. And that's partly Rapid Transformational Therapy, the RTT. So thank you again, Marina. That was awesome.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for having me.
Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more life-changing content. And if you're struggling, you don't have to. Go to bradchandler.com/contact. There, you can join the Facebook community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and you'll see a button to schedule your freedom and happiness call. See you on the next episode.